Hello and welcome to this tutorial. I'm going to be showing you how I did a gouache plein air painting in the beautiful valley of Ramsau. I hope I pronounced that right. I did a little, I think it's like a 4x6 gouache painting. Me and my husband went to Bavaria, Germany for a honeymoon, and we stayed in Brushstroke, and you can see just the mountains here are just gorgeous. We woke up to a direct view of Mount Watsman, and one day we decided to visit this adorable town called Ramsau, and there we visited the parish of Saint Sebastian, and there's a cemetery and also another cemetery on a hill, and you can see there's an adorable kitty there who is following us, and there you could see the beautiful valley in the town from that higher vantage point. And I knew that I just had to paint that with the town and wrapped with the mountains. And you can see that there's such gorgeous views all around. I probably could have painted here all day. Unfortunately, it was winter, so the days were quite short, but I did manage to squeeze a quick painting in on this beautiful sunny day. So let's get started. As you can see here, I've already done my prelim sketch, and I've actually sketched it with a marker that bled a little bit more than I wanted to, and I just lightly toned it with some yellow ochre. A really, really light wash. I always like to do this because I don't like working on a white canvas. Now, I have the reference photo on the bottom right so you can see. I chose to eliminate the foreground cemetery elements because I just wanted to focus on the town and, those beautiful blue mountains. And so right now, what I'm doing is I'm just blocking in those valleys behind the mountains and the valleys behind the town, because I'm thinking that even though a lot of the town is actually in shadow, you can see the white walls of the houses are kind of bathed in this baby blue shadow. I still want to try to keep the relatively toned white of the canvas to give me an idea of where those houses will be. Now, this was the first painting I actually did in Germany on our almost 3-week trip, and let me tell you, painting winter foliage, like those beautiful gray colors, don't get me wrong, I love grays, as you know if you follow any of my videos, but it is really hard to capture those nuances. You can see in the reference picture there's those warm and cooler grays in the left hill, and then the right hill it gets a little bit bluer, and there's these subtle hints of a little more saturation in the blue, and then the back mountains, the very back center mountain is actually quite saturated. And they're all quite similar in value as well. It was almost this kind of sunny, but not super sunny, not super overcast, like kind of like this in between. You can see that there's clouds in the sky, but there's pockets of light peeking through. So right now, my main intention is to just get a quick block in. Hopefully the weather won't change, which it didn't really. But for me, that is just the best way to really see if my values and my temperatures are working well together. And I will say for this painting, it's not a terribly complicated composition, although I do find centered compositions a little tricky because they can look a little bit, I guess, artificial. But I think the trickiest part was maintaining that spontaneity without having the urge to render everything. So right now I remember thinking I actually really love this phase, or I actually really liked how my painting was turning out in the beginning. I liked my values, I liked my warm and cooler temperatures in the hills. It's looking okay. The houses, I'm not sure how to tackle them, but you can see right now what I'm hoping to do is to mix a little bit of those warmer rooftops to start indicating where I want to place my houses. Now, no way am I really copying exact for exact what I'm seeing. I'm really terrible at that, actually. But you can see that the whites of the canvas, or the relative whites, not completely white because I toned it, is actually letting me be able to have pockets of relief so that I'm trying not to cover everything, actually. And right now what's happening is that I should actually wait for my paint to dry more, because what's happening is this baby blue, that shadow color of the walls of the houses that I'm putting down is kind of melding into the other values that I put down before. So it's not as clean as I would like it to be. Now, just to talk a little bit about the colors on my canvas, you can see that it's a little messy, true to my characteristic, right? I have a lot of white, I have lemon yellow, I think I have permanent yellow deep, of course yellow ochre randomly placed in the far right. I do use a little bit of opera pink. That's actually been my favorite color, just to sort of splash in as a pop of vibrancy. I have a little bit of, I think that's alizarin crimson. Everything's a little bit blown out in the light. And I have sky blue, and now I'm squeezing a little bit of viridian to really get those nice greener, rich tones in some areas in the back foliage. I also have brilliant green, which is another green that I really like to use, similar to opera pink, to kind of give those pops of vibrancy. But oftentimes what I'll do is I'll mix these more vibrant, maybe you can call them artificial saturated colors, with earthier tones like yellow ochre, lemon yellow, a primary color to kind of bring it back to a more earthy tone. You can also see that I did start off blocking off with quite a big brush, but now you can see that I'm switching to slightly smaller brushes. Now this is the time when I honestly would think that that smaller brush didn't help me. So this, I don't even know what size it is. It is quite a small brush, and I like it sometimes, but I will say that sometimes a small brush kind of makes me lose sight of the bigger picture, and I'll step back and I'll think, oh, I don't like any of the strokes I made. So constantly assessing your painting and, thinking if some of the strokes you put down are necessary is very important, to constantly step back in a plein air painting. You can see that I also haven't touched the sky too much yet, because the sky is one of the lightest elements. And so technically I could almost leave the sky almost the white of the canvas, maybe just mix a few lighter grayer clouds just to splash around a little bit. But this was the part of my painting where I was thinking, ugh, I don't like how it's turning out. And if you watch any of my other tutorials, I go through that almost with every painting. I don't know why. It's probably because I'm still trying to be a better painter. But I think things are looking a little bit too tight in my opinion, and I don't like the design of the houses in the valley. So need to figure that out. Things just feel a little bit tight right now. But you can see now that I have added a value in the sky. It's looking a little bit dark right now. So I know that I need to mix a lot of white to lighten it up and to hopefully get a happy medium in there. Now, what I learned from this painting is that, even though you see a lot of tree lines and, varying layers of trees, sometimes it's better to group them and redesign them in your painting. So what started happening was when I had the urge to sort of, paint the darker tree line, and then maybe this group, maybe in the bottom right, and try to indicate more valleys, it actually kind of read, I don't know, to me as a little bit more busy. So I had to constantly decide where to tone back, where to simplify, and where to maybe lighten up certain areas, like what I'm doing now. So you can see also now what has happened is some of my values have dried darker. So what I'm doing now is I'm using a round brush to lighten some of those warmer grays, because when values are too dark, they actually come forward too much. And so it wasn't creating the impression of depth that I wanted it to. So I'm just layering that on top. And I might quote this wrong, but I think Scott Christensen said is that when you mix a little bit of water into gouache and just put it on top without mixing too much, the color will actually dry as the actual value. I think that's what he told me. But we'll see what happens here. So I put those lighter values. I'm trying not to touch it. Right now I'm going to go back to my houses, and immediately what I see is that I also need to lighten up those green plains a little bit. So the green plains are actually being hit in light in the valley, and right now my values are too dark. And so I need to lighten that, because that's going to offer some relief and some lighter shapes that will carve themselves out from the darker areas of the valleys behind it. So I hope I do that. Let's see kind of what happens in the end. But yeah, so you can see that in those valleys, what I would mix is a linden green, which I don't see on my palette right now, but I would maybe mix a little bit of linden green, lemon yellow, maybe a little bit of brilliant green, and a little bit of yellow ochre just to bring that earthiness back. But yeah, the values are very, very subtle in this painting to me. And now I'm like, oh, I need to lighten up some of the rooftops again. So what I'm doing is I'm mixing, I think, some opera pink with some permanent yellow deep, maybe some white, just to pop a little bit more of those beautiful, vibrant, sienna colored rooftops that are so characteristic of European houses. And right now what I'm using is I'm using the smaller flat brush to just to indicate the walls of the houses. Now, because this is quite a distant scene, I know that I don't need to go into so much detail to indicate the houses. I just know that a little bit will go a long way, which is why, again, it's important to step back and see, did I add too many small shapes? Is it feeling too busy now? I just want it to feel like, the houses are kind of scattered in this valley, not too cramped or anything. So here is the final painting. You can find the full tutorial on Sentient Academy, which is where I run my digital painting mentorships, and I have a lot of gouache and digital one-off courses there as well. So make sure you definitely check that out.